and welcome to the Mindful Art Room. I'm Miss DeWan. Today I'm going to show you how to make a relatively simple bowl out of slabs. So we're going to start with about maybe 2 softball size block of clay. It's about 2 or 3 pounds. I'm going to be using a hump mold. So this is out of plaster. One thing you need to know about plaster is that it sucks all the moisture out of the clay. So you don't want to leave it on the mold overnight. So a hump mold is where you put the clay on top of the outside as opposed to putting it on the inside. So if you're working at home and you don't have a hump mold out of plaster, you can definitely use just like a plastic bowl that you have at home, put on the inside. Just make sure you put some plastic, like a plastic bag on the inside so the clay doesn't stick to this. I'm going to be using a rolling pin. If you don't have this, you can use a bottle that you have at home, a PVC pipe, or a big dowel. I'm also going to be using square dowels on either side so I can get the same thickness throughout the slab. These are 3/8 of an inch. To give me a good head start, I'm just going to start to push this with my hands to get a little bit more flat. It's a good idea to flip the clay over every once in a while. That way you can have even distribution of the weight, as well as just to make sure that it doesn't stick to the table. And then you just start rolling. So I know that it's the right thickness because when I roll my rolling pin on top of the dowels, I'm not hitting the clay anymore. So now I know it's 3/8 of an inch. So I want to show you folks something really cool. Clay takes on texture really, really well. So if you have a piece of fabric that has a nice texture, or lace, or you could even get leaves or sticks from home, you can place it right on the slab and gently roll your rolling pin over this fabric or any texture. I would recommend putting any texture on the outside of a bowl. I know I need more than just this diameter right now, and I have that much clay, so I'm gonna guesstimate about 1.5 inches all the way around. Using my needle tool, I'll just cut that out. I really like to use a banding wheel when doing these types of projects because I can easily turn it around. So the hump mold, I also like to have it uplifted a little bit. That way, if I have some extra clay that's going to be longer than what I have here, it's not going to press into the banding wheel. You're going to gently find the center approximately and lay it down. So really gently with your open palms, you're going to press down slightly and turn. As you're turning and pressing, the clay is going to compress around the form and flatten down around it. You want to be really, really gentle with this part. So now you can see why it was a good idea to put the hump mold up on something lifted, because this extra clay would have been smashed into the banding wheel. This way I can really easily trim this off. So using a fettling knife, you can also use a needle tool. So placing your knife or your needle tool underneath, find the base, press up on the hump mold. You're going to cut around. So I've centered my bowl on my banding wheel, and I'm going to score. Add water to create slip. And I like to go back over with the serrated rib to really score that in and create some nice slip. For making my foot ring, I'm making an extra long coil and a pretty thick coil. It's definitely thicker than the width of my thumb. And then score your foot ring. Cut off at an angle one side, and this is the side that you'll put down first. Place it right on the serrated part, and using your 2 fingers here, pinch and slightly press down on that serrated part. Where it overlaps, you want to cut it at the same angle you did for the first cut you did. Score and slip, and then compress. Every time you score and slip something, the clay also wants you to compress it. So I've compressed it once, but I'm going to do it again. I also like to use a damp sponge to smooth everything out. On day one, this is all the construction you're going to do. Don't fuss. At the plastic stage, you don't want to do any major details or tiny details, rather. This part is just to get the form. Don't worry about making it look perfect. You want to take this off of your plaster mold before it dries too much. As you know, clay shrinks as it dries. So if you left this on and came back to it, say tomorrow, the clay would have shrunk, but then of course the plaster mold would not have shrunk. So the clay would actually crack and break off. Once your bowl is leather hard, there are a number of things that you can do that you can't do when it's plastic. This is a bowl that I made yesterday, so it's had time to dry out. If I notice that I've lost the form, and if it's not perfectly round anymore, I can simply take my hump mold and place it back in and form it again. To get rid of this really hard edge, I'm going to use my metal rib. So hold on the outside, use your metal rib, and you're going to scrape off that hard edge. Notice how I'm holding on to this rib. My thumb is on one side, my finger's on the outside, and I'm actually kind of curving this around my thumb. And I'm having it at an angle away from my whole body. Notice the bevel right here. That's the clay that I took off. I still have a hard edge on the outside, so I'm going to cut that off now. Place it back on your banding wheel. Have one hand on the inside so it doesn't move around. And in that same hand position, my thumb on one side, my fingers pressing around the thumb so it's curved. I'm going to scrape off the outside this time. The last step is taking your sponge, wringing it out so there's barely any water in it, and then smoothing out the rim of your bowl. So now you see a really nice rounded and smooth rim. With the clay being leather hard, this is also a really great time to add more texture or stamping if you would like to, or even carving. Place it back on the mold so you don't distort it too much, and just place the stamp wherever you want and press in. The last stages of making the bowl is the cleanup. So take your sponge, look on the inside of the foot, smooth that all out so you don't have any seam. Do the outside as well. Clean up the bottom. Look through the outside here to see if there's anything that you need to clean up. Look on the inside. Once your bowl is completely done, there's one last thing that you need to do. Add your initials. And where you add your initials is up to you. I like to put it on the bottom. Use your sgraffito tool, use a dull pencil. Just don't use your needle tool. So notice when I use a needle tool to put in my initials, there's uneven lines. There's these little boogers of clay, and it's a much more sharp line. If I do that same thing with a sgraffito tool, notice the difference. With the sgraffito tool, I'm actually removing the clay to make my initials. Using a needle tool, I'm just pushing this clay aside, so it's not getting as clean of a design. So there you have a really basic way to make a bowl using a slab and a hump mold. Just remember that there's a lot of possibilities with making clay, making your own texture, putting stamps on it, carving into it. So remember to make it creative and unique to your own. Have fun.